Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I think we had our break till 11:25, so great to see so many faces. And Court, I see you're on the line as well.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning. Hello from New York. So welcome everyone to Diversio's third annual Inclusion Summit. Delighted to be here. Really excited for this next panel. I think our entire team has been looking forward to it, where we will be officially launching Diversio 3.0. We have been heads down working on a bunch of new features that we're really excited to walk you through and give you a sense for where the company is headed. So run a show for this session, this panel will be Courtney and I. Courtney is our product lead, really the brains behind the operation. And so I will walk through high level the products that Diversio has built so far. And then really the main event is Courtney is going to run through a live demo, which some of our early clients will recognize some of the features we've been building with their feedback, but for most people, it will be brand new. Great. What I thought we could do is start with a quick overview, and I'm sure, at this point, many of you know what Diversio does, but as a snapshot, our goal really is to build an all-in-one platform that end-to-end helps companies build, manage, navigate, and ultimately track their diversity and inclusion strategies. The idea is that we are building a suite of tools that help collect data from employees and then ultimately drive programming solutions, interventions that improve experience for everyone. And so starting with diversity, equity, and inclusion, of course, defining what that means, validating a set of metrics and a framework, collecting employee engagement data, more on that in a moment, consolidating that in one place, developing, implementing, executing trainings on topics like allyship, recruiting and hiring, using and leveraging data, certifying companies and people who demonstrate competence on the topic. And then last but not least, for our kind of security nerds, really creating a super safe, reliable system that's protected and keeps everybody anonymous so that their feedback is, they have a safe space to disclose. Great. And so to say the same thing, but on a different slide, again, really data analytics is core to our platform. Benchmarking, a lot of feedback from clients. We want to know how we stack up to industry so that we know what's achievable. Of course, taking that consultative approach and really working with our clients to help them develop and execute plans, report to the board, gain buy-in. Again, tracking employee engagement as a big part of that, developing trainings, and then ultimately certification. And so a little snapshot, again, really data and metrics is core to our approach. And the problem that we're working to solve at Diversio is too many companies struggle with having made a commitment to become more inclusive as a company, but don't really know how to do that, how to develop, actual programs, track their impact. And so we're really focused on that data piece, quantifying what matters in an organization from an inclusion and belonging perspective. And then really where the proof is in the pudding is we work with clients to drive change and ultimately track the progress and the impact it's having on employees. And what we're thrilled to have discovered, and again, proof is in the pudding, and starting this company, it was a little bit scary because truly, if it works, we would see that in the data, and if it didn't, we would see that as well. And so when we went back and analyzed all of our clients that have redeployed and tracked their progress, we were thrilled to see the vast majority of them have seen a significant improvement. So employees are coming back and they're saying it's a safe workplace. They feel like their opinion is valued. They feel like a leader is invested in their growth. They feel like they have the flexibility that they need to balance home care obligations and work. And on average, they see about a 6.2 point improvement, typically within about 12 months. So it takes about a year, but really consistently within that year, we do see if you take that data-driven measurable approach, it really does work. And so what is the point of using AI? I think it's, it's a piece of technology that we've baked into our product from the beginning. And the idea here is, and you'll hear more about this in a moment, we build algorithms using NLP, so natural language processing, to analyze employee free text, analyze their experience, and number one, identify really specific pain points. So what is it about the culture of the company that's affecting individuals? What are the really specific problems that they're facing? Doing that at a really granular level. So down to the department, down to the business unit, down to the country level, however, the company is organized. And then ultimately supporting that reporting function. So helping folks identify what are we doing well, what do people like about working here? And then equally important, what are the biggest opportunities that we have to improve? And again, benchmarking that to set really achievable, bold, but achievable goals is critical to the process. And so I think probably, hopefully, a lot of converts on this call already, so I won't belabor the point, but time and again, we see a huge amount of ROI on diversity and inclusion. And you're going to hear that expression ROI from us a lot. We are really leaning into quantifying the specific tactical impact that inclusion and belonging have on a company's bottom line. And some of the ways that we've identified that ROI, really manifesting are things like turnover. So we find when people feel included at their job, they're less likely to leave. They're more likely also to recommend their employer to, their talented colleagues and friends. So again, using that improvement in Net Promoter Score, so people like where they work, they're likely to recommend it. One thing that was interesting that we discovered is a reduction in sick days. And so again, people are, if they're excited about coming to work, less likely to take time off, more excited about coming into the office. And ultimately, while they're there, seeing an increase in performance. So productivity, not just because people are excited, but they have better relationships, there's less friction, there's less tension, and ultimately a smoother operation. So introducing, again, the main event for this session, and really, I would say a big part of today is introducing Diversio 3.0. And so some of the exciting features that we have been, our product and engineering team have been really focused on are things like multiple industry benchmarks. So that dynamic benchmarking component, not just against your industry, your region, but also against your country. Intersectionality is something that we've always been focused on, but really stepping up our capabilities on that front. So the ability to support and program around people who identify with more than one diverse characteristic. Of course, tracking that progress, again, the ROI component, viewing survey participation rate, so getting, again, more reporting forward on how the platform is being used. Consolidating and displaying, reminding folks about days of significance that are relevant to them throughout the year. And then ultimately a lot more survey customization and platform customization to make the products more usable on an ongoing basis.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for that introduction. This slide is actually in there by mistake, but that is okay. It is now time for the demo. So if I would be able to share my screen, that would be wonderful. Great. All right. Can everyone now see the new and improved Diversio platform? We good?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so welcome everyone to the new Diversio platform. I am so thrilled to be your tour guide and show you around a lot of the wonderful changes that we've made this morning, this afternoon, depending on where you're tuning in from. At first glance, there might be quite a bit of information here, and unfortunately, we don't have time to get into everything today, so I'm going to walk us through the most important and impactful features that we've added this past year. So at first glance, your attention is probably being drawn to this big red and purple banner at the top called Bottom Line Impact. This is one of the most valuable features that we've added to allow our clients to really understand if they have an immediate action point to take. And so what we're doing here is uncovering if there is a harassment risk in their company. And I'll get into a little bit more about how we calculate this. This does come from one of our inclusion metrics. We found a lot of people are really interested in preventative action rather than retroactive action. And this allows them to assess some important risks that they might be concerned about and get a really good idea of what steps they can take to alleviate those risks. And so this platform now is going to walk you through how we alleviate both a harassment risk and every other type of inclusion risk. If you join me over here, we have something called our inclusion score snapshot. This gives you a high-level overview of how the organization is doing. So this organization is doing pretty well. They're sitting at a 71 out of 100, and you can right away see that they're doing better than their benchmark, the fintech industry, and they're doing better than their previous year's score. One of the interesting things that we've added is the ability to compare yourself to multiple different benchmarks. This is really important for organizations like this one that might sit at the crux of a few different industries. So this company wants to take a look at fintech as their primary, but they also want to look at how they're doing when they compare to the finance and the IT industry. If we go down a little bit, we can see who this 71-point score is made up of. At the bottom left here, you'll see the people surveyed by role element. This is telling you that in this company, 73 or 66% of the respondents were in that below vice president level, and 37 or almost 34% of those respondents were at the VP level and above. If we want to look even further into the demographics of these respondents, we can take a look at the middle of the screen. Here you see race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, and disability. I'm going to focus a little bit here on gender for a second. What we're seeing here at this organization is they are at 57% men and almost 32% women. This first column here is comparing them to national census data. This organization is located in the US, so to no one's surprise, we're seeing that the census has 47% men and 52% women, and we're sitting a little bit off from that benchmark. This is an area where we would want to draw our attention to preliminarily. And another big element here of why this is a focus area for this organization is if you take a look at the benchmarks and their industry peers, you're also seeing that the industry peers have higher representation when it comes to women. So this is a great starting point and a great opportunity for this organization to take a look at what's going on as to why perhaps they're attracting less women, perhaps they're retaining less women. So we're going to keep going and see if we can figure that out together. As we get down here to diversity by role, what we're taking a look at is how these different demographics move through the levels present at this organization. So if we start over here on the left, we see that 41% of the people who are in the below vice president level are women. This is pretty good. There's only 31% women in the company. This is really strong representation at those more junior levels. However, we can clearly see that there's an upward mobility problem happening here. And as we get to those VP and executive level roles, we're only down to 14% women representation. So now we have a good idea of where we stand when it comes to representation of women in our company. We're doing a little bit below benchmark. We seem to have a lot more representation at the junior levels, not as much at the senior levels. We can tie this into our inclusion aspects here and figure out what's really going on. So if we go down a little bit more, you're met with our inclusion scorecard. This is a snapshot of a section that we'll get into in much more detail in just a few minutes. At a glance here, you're seeing your company's score at the top compared to your benchmark, with the option to compare it to multiple as well. So sort of a logical conclusion we can draw here is that because career development is highlighted in red, this is an opportunity area for this company. It's probably no surprise that we're having an upward mobility problem with our women getting from those more junior roles to the more senior roles. But let's take a look more specifically at women's representation. So switching over to gender, I'm going to pause here for a moment because we're seeing a new terminology that's a little bit specific to Diversio. The dominant group is a term that we've coined to really help further a deeper analysis of what's going on in the organization when it comes to inclusion. The dominant group is made up of the traits most common at the leadership level, and anyone who matches this demographic profile typically accesses inclusion at a higher rate in the company. So this is a really valuable point of comparison because we can take all of the people who are considered non-dominant, in this case, women and additional genders, and compare their experience to that of the dominant group. And so what we're seeing here is the opportunity areas for women are first and foremost in career development. There's a 30-point gap between the dominant group and non-dominant group, and also in fair management. And these two metrics sort of tie this puzzle all together because these inclusion KPIs are getting at the heart of whether or not you're receiving fair and objective feedback on your performance. So do you get good performance reviews, or do you get performance reviews at all? And also, do you have anyone who's looking out for you, a mentor, a sponsor, somebody invested in your career growth? And so if we tie these two elements together, a lack of representation at the upper levels and a lack of feeling like there are opportunities to advance and that there are people in the organization helping you out, we can start to understand on a deeper level what's going on when it comes to inclusion at this organization. Now, for some people, this might be enough action for them. They sort of see what's going on. They want to set goals around this right away. And so if that's you, you can jump on down here and go and set some goals directly from the homepage. But for our purposes today, we're going to dive in even further and see if we can uncover some more information about what's going on. So coming back to the top, I'm going to head over to our Analyze section, and I'm going to start in diversity. Now I'm going to switch us over to gender representation, and we're going to take a look at what's going on a little bit of a deeper level. I'll zoom in here. This organization is a little bit smaller, but some organizations have significantly more representation going on. So we have lots of options to show you all of the details of what's happening at your company. But focusing in here, in this case, on men and women, we can see these representation percentages matching what we were looking at on the homepage. I'm going to apply some filters so we can start to understand what's going on. Now, we all know that if you want to be in a more senior position at your organization, you typically have to stick around for a little bit longer. So let's see if there is a tenure or retention issue. Are there women leaving the company and there's only a few staying up to that, 5 or 10 year point? We can do that by adding a filter. I'm going to start off with the smaller tenure, so looking at anyone who's been there from 0 to 3 years. Going to add this filter and zoom back in, and we can take a look. So we have 31% or 13 women have been at the company for 1 year or less, or 1 to 3 years. Keep that number in mind. We're going to switch over to our long tenured employees, 5 to 10, 10 plus. Add that filter in. And what we're seeing is almost 29%, 15 women have been at the company for 5 to 10 plus years. And so this little piece of information is telling us that women are sticking around in this organization. We're seeing pretty consistent representation no matter how long we're looking at for tenure. And so we can understand a little bit more deeply that what we're looking at here is not a retention issue necessarily, but there is some sort of deeper inclusion happening. So if we want to switch our focus now, armed with that information, over to inclusion, can click the little shortcut at the top, and now we're right in our inclusion section. So this overview might look a little familiar. This is on the homepage showing us at a glance how we are doing compared to our industry, but I'm going to turn our attention over to the target group section. This will allow us to focus on our gender representation. And so this view is also a little bit familiar. We're seeing those 2 pain points highlighted for this organization. But what we want to do now is focus on the specific pain points that are happening for the more junior level employees and the more senior level employees. So again, I'm going to come over to filters, and I'm this time going to add on the below VP and executive director level filter, hit submit, and we can see that the difference in scores here is that career development has dropped even lower. So a lot of these women at this organization at the junior level are really, really feeling like their career development opportunities are not there. And you can see that their scores are a little bit low across the board here, but we really do want to focus in on what career development is measuring and make that comparison to the dominant group and how they're experiencing things. So this dominant group is now filtered to also just contain those below vice president and executive level people. And so we can see that there's a 20-point difference in how these two groups are accessing career development opportunities. This is an important thing to keep in mind, and we're going to switch to seeing the pain points that are happening for our upper level employees. So applying this other filter, we can see that there's some different things going on here for gender when we're looking at our KPIs. Career development is a little bit less of a focus. It's not the highest score, but it's definitely not the biggest thing that's top of mind for these employees. The biggest opportunity area for women at the vice president and executive director level is workplace flexibility. And so putting workplace flexibility is measuring whether or not you can maintain a work-life balance. Do you have the flexibility and support to manage your obligations outside of work without adding additional stress to your life? And so let's take a step back and put this entire picture together. What we've discovered is that there is a lack of representation of women as a whole at this organization, but more specifically, there's a lack of upward mobility for women at this organization. The people at the bottom are feeling like they don't have opportunities to advance, that no one's invested in making sure that they can build a future here. And the people at the top, the women at the top, are struggling to maintain that workplace flexibility, to care for things that they're experiencing outside of the workplace. All of this combined together is really causing our upward mobility and lack of representation for women. And so what the platform does next is it'll take you over to goal setting, so you can action on these elements that the platform is pointing out are areas of focus. We're going to jump over there now, and we're going to hit on get started. And so all of those areas that you saw that were red in our heat map are going to automatically generate as goals for you to create. But I'm going to focus down here on making a custom goal so we can get at the heart of what's going on from our discovery. So what's happening here is that I want to talk about putting a 10-point improvement for our workplace flexibility KPI for women. And the reason that I want to do this is because we really want to solve for the problems that are happening in women at the top of the company. They're not feeling like they can take care of their flexible work opportunities. And flexible work is something that comes a little bit before we can focus on career development. So if we're able to fix that workplace flexibility obligation, add some programs, policies, some roadmap items to our organization, we might be surprised to see that things for career development actually improve without even doing any targeted approach to career development. And so the platform will now show us some programs specifically catered towards improving workplace flexibility and improving it for women. Now, for the sake of time, I went ahead and read through all of these in advance, and I've saved some that we would want to tackle this year. And so I have our goal at the top, and I have a few programs that I liked, and I've activated them to indicate that these are going to be the things that I've put on my roadmap for the year. So a couple of workplace flexibility items, a couple of fair management, career development items, and putting all of this together will allow us to come back, survey the next year, and see that meaningful improvement in scores and work on retaining women, promoting women, and overall creating a more inclusive culture for this organization. Wonderful. All right.
Fabulous. Thank you, Courtney. So I think we're probably pretty close to time. Or do we wrap up at 12, Courtney, this session?
I think we have about 10 more minutes, yeah.
Awesome. So I thought we could open for Q&A, and I know there's been some discussion in the chat, but if anyone has any questions or, even on our team, some common questions that we get, now is the time, and we'll do our best to answer. So I think I saw one around the dominant group, Courtney. So maybe walk us through like how that's identified and why we chose to use that methodology.
Yeah, absolutely. So the dominant group is identified more specifically as the characteristics at the highest level at your organization, whether that's called leadership, executives, customized to the organization, the highest level. And we look at the core demographics of the people in that group. We look at gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and their disability status, which includes mental health conditions, physical disability, and cognitive conditions. And we combine that into a profile that is created to be the dominant group of that organization. And so the leadership level is going to have the highest representation of that selected group of characteristics, but it does then get applied to the entire organization. Typically, what we see is that anyone who shares the most common traits of leadership is enjoying additional opportunities at the company unconsciously, but they are experiencing that level of inclusion that might not be available to everybody else. And the reason that this is such a valuable comparison point is you can get at the heart of how different experience is for people who match the dominant group, the people who are probably making a little bit more decisions about the company, and the people who don't match that group. And we do.
So
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, so, I think the point that you're describing is we can't define in advance who is getting opportunities until we understand what that breakdown looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is different for every organization. We do see a typical profile, but we have many organizations where, you could have lesbian women as the dominant group. You could have gay men as the dominant group. There's lots of options. It's really a powerful tool because it's dependent on your organization's makeup.
Great. I see a few more open questions. One maybe quickly. So it's Diversio FedRAMP certified. We're in the process. So we do work with a number of US government organizations, and we're definitely exploring work in that space. Courtney, maybe one for you. I'm seeing one around, thank you, Michelle Powell, how robust the platform is. How long does it typically take an individual using the platform to get comfortable with using it? How long does it take to kind of train and onboard?
Yeah, absolutely. Not very long, fortunately, because part of our process here is that you'll have a dedicated CSM to show you your results, kind of similarly to how I did. They'll get you familiar with the most important pieces and then allow you the opportunity to play with the data yourself and ask questions. But we've really tried to create a cohesive experience. So the way that you interact with one page is the way that you interact with another page. And that really lessens that learning curve. So typically we see 1 or 2 sessions and people are really able to pick up the power of the tool.
Great. And I know that's something that Will, our designer, has been laser focused on is how do we make it super clear, super simple, something that an executive could log in and understand without, really needing that background knowledge. So thank you for that, Courtney. Another question coming up, if someone signs up for a demo, is there an obligation or is it more of a kind of an opportunity to learn?
Yeah, I would say it's an opportunity to learn. We want to make sure that we're a great fit to help your organization move the needle on DEI. And all of our AEs are exceptionally talented. I actually worked with one of them in creating part of this talk track that I shared with you all today. And so it would be a little similar, but they would have a little bit more time to walk you through quite a few of the features that we didn't get to cover.
Yeah, so no obligation. We, really love connecting with people in this space, and our diversity specialists are excited to share learnings and benchmarks on that call. So please do, reach out. I see another one on here around, I like this question a lot, actually. Can you expand on cognitive conditions? So how do we define that, and how, robust is that data typically? Are people likely to provide it?
Absolutely. I really like that question as well, because this was a huge point of effort for us this time around. Unfortunately, I didn't get to show it today, but what we have is our cognitive condition category where we use, we put the conditions in there as defined with I believe the DSM-5, if there's another one, we used the newer one, but the conditions as they're defined scientifically. But the benefit is we now have those definitions specifically in the platform, and we're showing you who in your organization, or not who, we're showing you what cognitive conditions are present in your organization and what conditions are not present, along with the definition of what those conditions might mean for those who are less familiar. So we're not necessarily exposing anybody's mental health or cognitive conditions, but we are giving you more information about what exists at your company so you can plan accordingly.
And can you give us maybe an example of a condition?
Absolutely. For our cognitive conditions, we have things like ADHD and dyslexia. For mental health, we have things like depression and anxiety. And for physical conditions, we have things like deafness and blindness.
And what about self-reporting, Courtney? I think I've been really surprised at the prevalence of these conditions in organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been seeing a much higher reporting framework or reporting amounts for mental health conditions specifically. But the I think the beauty of it, at least from my perspective, is people are feeling comfortable enough to share and bring their full self to the workplace. And so perhaps it's not necessarily that more people are experiencing these struggles, but that more people are feeling comfortable enough to be their full present self in the workplace. And we're seeing that come through in the results.
Got it. And why do you think people feel safe and comfortable disclosing?
Well, there's two elements going on here. One is that they trust our process. They trust that Diversio is protecting them from being, identified specifically, that we're sharing aggregated results. And the other element is that, they are trusting their employer. Their employer is making that effort to go forward with an inclusion survey to really understand how their employees are feeling. And they see that, they value that, and they want to give them the best information to make the most meaningful choices.
Great. And I think one thing that I've observed, and we spoke about this a little bit earlier, is when employees see that their data is being used to drive programs and solutions that they feel is responsive to what they've shared, that becomes a really virtuous cycle. And so we do typically see response rates, self-identification rates go up after the first survey. Especially when the company is really transparent and strategic around what they're rolling out as for the benefit of employees. So I think that's a trend that we've seen as well. If employees trust that the data is being used for their benefit, it sounds obvious, but that trust is not always there. You get much higher rates.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fabulous. I think we might have answered all the questions. Is EAP info shared? I'm guessing that's employee profiles.
If that means specific employee profiles down to the individual person, no, that is not shared. All of our results are on the aggregate level. We have an anonymity threshold of 8. So if 8 people don't share the same profile that you're trying to assess, you won't see the results.
Fabulous. Okay, fantastic. So I guess if there are no further questions, we'll start to transition. I think Anya hopefully has shared our white paper in the chat. If not, we'll share that as soon as possible. And please do send us your thoughts, send us your feedback, send us your comments. We're always looking to improve. Amazing. Okay, thank you everyone for joining the session. I will turn it back to Kate to bring us back to the agenda and get ready for our next one.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Courtney. I am not Kate, but I'll actually jump in. And just wanted to again thank you everyone who stuck around to listen to our demo. We are very, very excited about it. So hope that you enjoyed the presentation as well. And if you have any questions or about the white paper, about the process, about how to do this yourselves internally, or how to potentially leverage us or partner with us, please reach out. We're very friendly, I promise. So now I think we're taking a bit of a break until 12:30, and at 12:30 we're going to be jumping into our fireside chat. So definitely don't miss that. It's a really exciting start to an afternoon full of panels and really great conversations with CHROs and chief diversity officers all across different industries and sectors. So we'll see you in 30 minutes. Thanks, everyone.